You're just a janitor. Your only job here is to clean. Stop pretending you understand business. People like you need to know your place." The words, sharp as shards of glass, echoed through the boardroom. Brad Mitchell's face was a mask of crimson fury. His finger pointed accusingly at the woman standing quietly in the corner. Around the polished mahogany table, a dozen executives sat frozen, witnesses to a confrontation as sudden as it was brutal. Sarah Johnson stood beside her cleaning cart, her back ramrod straight, a bastion of quiet dignity. Tears welled, threatening to spill, but she refused to let them fall. For 3 long years, she had weathered the whispers, the condescending glances, the casual dismissals that were a part of her daily life. But this public excoriation before the company's entire leadership was different. Brad's voice escalated, each word laced with more venom than the last. "I don't know why you think you can just interrupt our meeting. You clean toilets for a living." No one in that building had any inkling of who Sarah Johnson truly was. They saw a uniform, a cart of cleaning supplies, and a silent woman who haunted the halls on the night shift. They saw what they expected to see and never bothered to look deeper. But when Sarah finally spoke, revealing a talent she had long kept hidden, the silence that fell upon the room was absolute. Jaws dropped, eyes widened. The man who had been screaming moments before now stood speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. At 45 years old, Sarah Johnson had spent the last 3 years as a janitor at Global Tech Industries. But she was not just any janitor. As she moved through the empty, sterile offices each night, earbuds nestled in her ears, she absorbed the world. One night, it was French news. The next, a German business analysis, followed by Japanese cultural programs or discussions in Mandarin. What no one at Global Tech knew was that the quiet woman they barely noticed was once Dr. Sarah Johnson, a respected professor of linguistics who had taught at universities across Africa. She was fluent in 17 different languages. But life has a way of ambushing even the most brilliant of people. Born in Africa to parents who were both educators, Sarah had built a beautiful life for herself. Then, the world she knew was consumed by political strife. In one horrific day, a civil war raging through her city stole her husband and children. It stole her home, her career, her entire existence. With nothing left but the clothes on her back and a shattered heart, she fled to America, hoping to start anew. Rebuilding a life from ashes proved harder than she could have ever imagined. Her impressive credentials and experience meant nothing without the proper paperwork, and she knew no one who could help her navigate the bureaucratic maze. The profound grief of her loss was a constant, heavy shroud, making every step a monumental effort. The only work she could find was cleaning buildings. Yet Sarah never complained. She harbored no bitterness. She simply did her job with a quiet professionalism that went unnoticed. The employees she served, however, were not always kind. Most ignored her completely. Some were openly rude. At the helm of the company was Marcus Wellington. At 38, he had recently inherited the CEO position from his father. Marcus was intelligent, a top business school graduate with a sharp mind for technology, but he was haunted by a problem that kept him awake at night. Global Tech's attempts at international expansion were a catastrophic failure. Deal after deal with companies in Japan, France, and Germany had imploded, costing the company millions. Marcus was under immense pressure from the board of directors. Many of them believed he was too young, that he'd only gotten the job through nepotism. These failed international deals were ammunition for his detractors. Adding to the complex corporate dynamic was Jessica Morrison, the HR director. With over a decade at the company, she preached diversity and inclusion but harbored deep-seated biases that colored her every action. The one person who treated Sarah with genuine kindness was David Chen, the night security guard. A retired police officer in his 60s, David had taken the job to stay busy. He was the only employee who saw Sarah as a person, asking about her day, sharing stories of his grandchildren, and offering the simple gift of human respect. And then there was Brad Mitchell. A junior executive in his early 30s, Brad was the embodiment of corporate arrogance, his ego far outstripping his abilities. He was openly contemptuous of anyone he deemed beneath him, especially the cleaning staff. He made cutting remarks within Sarah's hearing and sometimes left messes deliberately. Most of the time, he treated her as if she were invisible, unless he needed to feel superior. Every night, as Sarah cleaned the executive suites, the glass walls of the conference rooms offered no barrier to the sounds of corporate struggle. She couldn't help but overhear the late-night arguments about failing strategies and collapsing deals. As she listened, a quiet frustration grew within her. These highly paid executives were making elementary mistakes. They mispronounced names, misunderstood fundamental cultural protocols, and approached negotiations in ways almost guaranteed to cause offense. The Japanese deal had failed because they were too aggressive, pushing for contracts before building a relationship, a fatal error in a culture where trust is paramount. The French negotiations collapsed because the American team was too casual, their lack of formality seen as a sign of disrespect. The German deal had just fallen through because they had tried to build an emotional connection, when their German counterparts valued hard data, precise timelines, and logical, fact-based arguments. Each failure was predictable, preventable. It was agony for Sarah to witness, knowing she possessed the exact knowledge they so desperately needed. But she was just the janitor. No one would ever ask her opinion. One Tuesday morning, at 7:30 a.m., Sarah was still finishing her work on the executive floor when Brad Mitchell and Jessica Morrison arrived early. "Oh, great," Brad announced loudly. "The cleaning lady is still here, taking all day to do a simple job." Jessica laughed. "Well, some people just work at a different pace, Brad." As they began rehearsing for an upcoming meeting with a German client, Sarah overheard them butchering the pronunciations of names and technical terms. Without thinking, she whispered the correct pronunciations under her breath. Brad's head snapped in her direction. "Excuse me? Did the janitor just try to correct us?" "No, sir," Sarah said softly, her eyes downcast. "Don't lie to me," Brad snarled, stepping toward her. "You were listening to our private conversation and actually thought you could correct your betters?" Jessica moved in, a cruel smile on her face. "This is exactly the problem. People who don't understand their place." Other employees began to gather, forming a silent, watchful circle. "You know what your problem is?" Brad continued, his voice echoing in the hallway. "You're not an employee. You're the help. You're here to clean up after educated people." "This is insubordination," Jessica added, nodding. "Clear disrespect for the workplace hierarchy." The crowd grew, their faces a mixture of discomfort and morbid curiosity. No one stepped in. "I want you to repeat after me," Brad demanded, invading her personal space. "Say, 'I am just a janitor, and I don't belong in conversations with educated people.'" "I can't say that," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "You can't follow a simple instruction?" Brad roared. "This is exactly the attitude problem we're dealing with." "Let's document this," Jessica chimed in. "Insubordination, disrupting the workplace." The threat was clear. They could have her fired. "Please," Sarah pleaded, her composure finally breaking. "I just want to do my job. I need this work." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before acting like you belong," Brad said with a harsh laugh. "One more incident and you're gone." That night, as the board of directors met late to dissect yet another international failure, Sarah cleaned nearby. A heated conversation in French erupted from the speakerphone, and the executives looked at each other in bewildered frustration. In the corner of the room, emptying a trash can, was the one person who could solve all their problems, but all they could see was her uniform. Without thinking, Sarah spoke, her voice clear and calm. In perfect French, she clarified the complex business terms the client was using. The room fell dead silent. Marcus Wellington, the CEO, stared at her in utter shock. "Did you just speak French?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. That was the moment everything changed. "I have a PhD in linguistics," Sarah said, her voice ringing with a newfound strength. "And I speak 17 languages fluently." The words hung in the air like an electric charge. You could have heard a pin drop. Brad Mitchell stood frozen, his mouth agape. Jessica Morrison looked as if she might faint. Marcus, however, was not a man who dealt in assumptions. His reputation was built on verification. "I know this sounds impossible," he said, his tone respectful but firm. "But if what you say is true, can you prove it?" Sarah took a deep breath. For 3 years she had been invisible. Now, finally, someone was asking to see her. "What would you like me to demonstrate, Mr. Wellington?" "We just lost a deal with Schneider Automotive in Germany," Marcus said. "Start there. Speak to me in German." In that instant, a subtle transformation occurred. The quiet janitor receded, and the confident professor she once was emerged. She began to speak in flawless, sophisticated German, her pronunciation and grammar impeccable. The board members exchanged stunned glances. Japanese, Marcus pressed. We lost Tanaka Industries last month. Without pausing, Sarah shifted to Japanese, her tone imbued with the formal politeness that had so eluded his executive team. French, he whispered. She responded in the elegant, articulate French of an educated Parisian. Mandarin Chinese. Again, she transitioned effortlessly, her command of the language absolute. The executives, who thought themselves the smartest people in any room, were now watching their janitor perform a feat of linguistic brilliance none of them could even approach. You said 17, Marcus said, his voice filled with awe. Sarah listed them. English, German, French, Japanese, Mandarin, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, Arabic, Hindi, Swahili, Yoruba, Igbo, Xhosa, Dutch, and Korean. And you're fluent enough for business negotiations? Fluent enough to conduct negotiations, understand cultural nuances, and navigate complex legal and technical terminology, she confirmed. Marcus was beginning to see not a problem, but an incredible, unforeseen solution. He then asked the question that brought her story full circle. Sarah, if you have all this expertise, how did you end up working here as a janitor? Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time she did not hide them. She spoke of the war, of the family she had lost, of the crushing grief and the struggle to survive in a new country. When you are grieving, she said simply, you take whatever work you can find. Cleaning buildings paid the bills. But I never stopped learning. Even here, I was listening, studying, staying current. I knew that someday, I might get a chance to use my knowledge again. Marcus looked around the room at his stunned team, then back at Sarah. I have to ask you directly. Would you be willing to help us? To use your expertise to help global tech succeed? The question hung in the air, a lifeline. 3 years of being overlooked, of being undervalued, had led to this single moment. Mr. Wellington, she said, her voice steady. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to ask me that question. The words that Marcus spoke next would change everything. Sarah, he said, his voice brimming with a new energy. I need to see this in action. We have a Japanese client, Tanaka Industries, that we've been trying to close a deal with for 8 months. They've been polite but distant, Marcus Wellington explained, the frustration evident in his voice. We can't seem to make any real progress. Would you be willing to help us with a video call? Sarah felt her heart hammer against her ribs. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for through 3 long years of anonymity. The chance to finally use her skills to prove that she was more than just the woman who emptied their trash cans. I would be honored to help, she replied, her voice remarkably steady despite the magnitude of what was happening. Marcus didn't hesitate. He immediately called his assistant. Cancel my next 3 meetings and set up a video conference with Mr. Tanaka at Tanaka Industries in Tokyo. Tell them we have some new developments regarding our partnership proposal. Within 30 minutes, the call was arranged. Word was already spreading through the office, a current of curiosity rippling through the cubicles. Something unusual was happening in the executive conference room. Employees found excuses to walk past the glass walls, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the unfolding mystery. As they prepared, Marcus turned to Sarah. What should I know before we start? To watch Sarah's transformation was to witness a sea change. The quiet, unassuming janitor vanished, replaced by the confident, poised international business consultant she had once been. Her posture straightened, her eyes sharpened with focus. Mr. Wellington, she began, her tone crisp and professional. In Japanese business culture, the opening of any meeting is crucial. We must begin with proper greetings and acknowledge the honor of speaking with them. I will need to reference their company's history and achievements before we even approach the topic of business. And above all, we must not rush them for an answer. Patience and respect for their decision-making process are essential. When the video call connected, the image of Mr. Tanaka materialized on the screen. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, his suit perfectly pressed, exuding an aura of quiet authority. Behind him, 2 other executives from his company sat with disciplined stillness. What happened next felt like watching a master at work. Sarah bowed respectfully toward the camera and began speaking in flawless, eloquent Japanese. Her pronunciation was perfect, her tone appropriately formal, her entire demeanor a study in deep respect for their customs. She opened by thanking Mr. Tanaka for honoring them with his time, acknowledging the long and revered history of Tanaka Industries. She spoke of the company's reputation for quality and innovation in terms that brought a subtle, pleased expression to the Japanese executives' faces. Marcus and the other global tech executives watched in stunned amazement. They couldn't understand a single word, but they could see the universal language of engagement. Mr. Tanaka's posture was changing. He was leaning forward, his gaze fixed on Sarah, showing a level of interest he had never displayed in any of their previous calls. Sarah explained Global Tech's capabilities and how they could support Tanaka Industries' expansion plans. But she did so in the Japanese way, slowly, respectfully, with careful attention to building the relationship rather than pushing for a transaction. The conversation lasted for over an hour. During that time, Sarah demonstrated a breathtaking knowledge not just of the language, but of Japanese business culture, manufacturing processes, and even recent developments in their domestic technology sector that clearly impressed Mr. Tanaka and his team. Near the end of the call, something incredible happened. Mr. Tanaka began speaking more animatedly, his gestures becoming more expressive. He was asking questions, making suggestions, and engaging with the proposal in a way Global Tech had only dreamed of. When the call finally ended, Mr. Tanaka bowed deeply and said something in Japanese that made Sarah smile. A genuine, radiant smile for the first time in months. "What did he say?" Marcus asked, his voice a tense whisper, barely able to contain his excitement. "He said that finally," Sarah translated, her voice soft, "someone from Global Tech understands how to do business properly. He wants to move forward with the partnership. He's sending his team to visit our offices next month to finalize the details." The room erupted. Marcus stared, incredulous. This deal, dead in the water for 8 months, had just been resurrected in a single hour. But the news was already escaping the conference room, spreading through the Global Tech offices like wildfire. Whispers turned to astonished murmurs racing through the corridors. The janitor, they said, spoke perfect Japanese. The janitor had just closed a major international deal. Jessica Morrison, the HR director, was frantically trying to understand what was happening. Brad Mitchell's phone buzzed with calls from colleagues asking if it was true, if the cleaning lady was some kind of secret genius. The story reached every floor, every department. The woman most employees had barely noticed was suddenly the center of a storm of attention, and not everyone was comfortable with what they were hearing. Within hours of the call, Marcus Wellington made a decision that would shake Global Tech to its core. He called an emergency meeting of the board of directors for the following morning. The boardroom was packed. All 12 members were present, along with senior executives and department heads. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as Marcus prepared to address what many already considered the most unusual board meeting in the company's history. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice commanding silence. "Yesterday, something happened that has forced me to reevaluate everything about how this company operates. We have been struggling with international expansion for over 2 years, losing millions of dollars in failed negotiations. Yesterday," he continued, pausing to let the words sink in one phone call, we secured a deal that had been stagnant for 8 months. The person who made that happen has been working in this building for 3 years, but she wasn't in our international division. She wasn't in our executive training program. She was cleaning our offices at night. Murmurs rippled through the room. Board members exchanged confused, skeptical glances. "Before we go any further," Marcus said, "I want to show you something that was captured on our security cameras 3 days ago." He pressed a button, and the large screen at the front of the room came to life. The footage showed Brad Mitchell, his face red with anger, pointing his finger aggressively at Sarah Johnson as he berated her. The audio was chillingly clear. "You're just a janitor. Stop pretending you understand business. People like you need to know your place." The room watched in a heavy, uncomfortable silence as the video continued, showing Sarah's dignified response and the stunned reaction of the others present when she revealed her qualifications. When the screen went black, the silence in the boardroom was deafening. Several board members shifted in their seats, the implications of what they had just witnessed sinking in. "This," Marcus said, his voice firm with conviction, "is completely unacceptable. But it gets worse. What you just saw was not an isolated incident. For 3 years, Dr. Sarah Johnson has been subjected to dismissive treatment and outright discrimination, all while possessing qualifications that surpass most of the people in this room. At his cue, Sarah entered the meeting. Dressed in a simple but professional outfit, the transformation was striking. She carried herself not as a janitor, but with the quiet confidence of the accomplished academic she was. "Board members," Marcus announced. "I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Johnson. She holds a PhD in linguistics, speaks 17 languages fluently, and has over 15 years of experience as an international business consultant." Sarah stepped forward. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and steady. "For the past 3 years, I have observed this company's struggles with international expansion, while possessing the exact expertise needed to solve them." She moved to the presentation screen, and a comprehensive analysis she had prepared overnight appeared. The first slide detailed Global Tech's international failures, with a precise breakdown of why each deal had collapsed. "The pattern is clear," Sarah explained. "Every single failed negotiation can be traced to cultural misunderstandings, language barriers, or inappropriate communication strategies." She clicked to the next slide, a deep dive into the German automotive deal that had recently fallen through. One by one, board members leaned forward, captivated. She wasn't just identifying problems, she was offering specific, actionable solutions. "I have developed a comprehensive strategy for successful expansion into 12 new international markets," she continued. "Each requires a different approach based on its unique cultural norms and business practices." Her next slide showed projected revenue increases. The numbers were staggering, forecasting hundreds of millions in new revenue over the next 5 years. Figures appeared on the screen that made the board members sit upright, numbers that represented not just profit, but a complete reversal of their fortunes. She then launched into a masterful explanation of cultural protocols, effortlessly switching between languages to demonstrate key nuances. She discussed business customs, decision-making hierarchies, and relationship-building strategies with the authority of someone who had dedicated her life to the subject. The board members exchanged amazed glances. This woman, invisible to them for 3 years, was delivering one of the most brilliant presentations they had ever seen. Then came the uncomfortable questions. Board member Robert Hayes spoke first. "Dr. Johnson, if you have this expertise, why did you never approach management? Why continue working as a janitor?" Sarah's response was measured, but it landed with surgical precision. "Mr. Hayes, in the 3 years I've worked here, how many times has anyone in management asked for my input on anything? How many times has anyone engaged me in a conversation beyond basic pleasantries? The answer is 0. She continued. "I applied for professional positions when I first arrived in America, but without American work experience, without connections, and facing the biases many immigrants encounter, cleaning jobs were the only employment I could find." Dr. Chen followed up. "But surely you could have mentioned your background to someone." "I tried," Sarah said calmly, "and I was mocked and humiliated for it." The truth settled over the room like a heavy blanket. They all knew she was right. The corporate culture at Global Tech had created invisible walls, preventing them from seeing talent that didn't fit their narrow, preconceived notions. At that moment, Brad Mitchell, who had been shrinking in the back of the room, stood up. "I think we're all getting carried away here," he said, his voice laced with defensiveness. "Yes, maybe I was a little harsh, but we can't just promote the cleaning staff because they claim to have some education." The room fell silent, the atmosphere turning icy. Oblivious, Brad pressed on. "I mean, anyone can say they have a PhD. We need to focus on practical experience and proven results." Dr. Chen stood, her voice dangerously quiet. "Mr. Mitchell, are you suggesting Dr. Johnson is a liar?" "I'm just saying we should verify these claims," Brad replied, digging his own grave deeper with every word. Marcus had heard enough. "Brad, Dr. Johnson's credentials have been fully verified. And yesterday, she accomplished in 1 hour what our entire international division couldn't in 8 months. His voice hardened. "But more importantly, your behavior was disgraceful. The way you treated her reflects a poison within this organization." Then Sarah did something that stunned everyone. She addressed Brad directly, her dignity and professionalism making his earlier outbursts seem even more pathetic by comparison. "Mr. Mitchell," she said calmly, I understand this is uncomfortable for you. For 3 years, you saw only my job title, not my potential. But that says more about the limitations of your perspective than it does about my worth. The board watched, spellbound. It was a masterclass in grace under pressure. I don't expect an apology, Sarah continued, because I don't believe you truly understand what you did wrong. But I hope that today will teach you to look more carefully at the people around you before deciding they have nothing to offer. The board's response was swift. Dr. Patricia Chen spoke for the group. Mr. Mitchell, your thinking is exactly what has been holding this company back. Your inability to recognize talent because of your own biases is a liability we can no longer afford. His fate was sealed. Robert Hayes addressed the broader issue. How many other talented people are we overlooking? How many opportunities are we missing because we aren't listening? Marcus then presented his formal recommendation. I propose that we offer Dr. Sarah Johnson the position of Director of International Relations with a mandate to lead our global expansion and develop the cultural competency programs we so desperately need. The vote was unanimous. Sarah sat there, tears streaming silently down her face as the room filled with applause. 3 years of invisibility, of being overlooked and undervalued, had ended in a moment of profound recognition. But the board wasn't finished. Dr. Chen made another proposal. I also recommend a comprehensive review of our hiring and promotion practices to ensure we never let talent like this slip through our fingers again. As for Brad Mitchell, his contract was terminated immediately. The meeting concluded with Sarah being asked to present her detailed expansion plan within 2 weeks. As the board members filed out, many stopped to speak with her, to welcome her, to express their excitement. Marcus was the last to leave. Sarah, he said, his voice filled with remorse. I owe you an apology, not just for Brad, but for the fact that it took us 3 years to see the incredible asset you are. Sarah smiled through her tears. Mr. Wellington, sometimes the most valuable things are worth waiting for. I'm ready to help global tech become the international success story it was always meant to be. As she walked out of that boardroom, she was no longer the invisible janitor. She was Dr. Sarah Johnson, Director of International Relations, poised to transform a company and prove that true talent often comes in the most unexpected forms. The confrontation was over. Justice had been served, and the real work was just beginning. By the end of that day, decisions had been made that would change lives forever. Brad Mitchell's termination was immediate. He was escorted from the building that afternoon, his career at Global Tech ending in disgrace. Jessica Morrison, the HR director whose inaction had enabled a toxic culture, was demoted from her executive position and assigned to mandatory diversity and inclusion training. Meanwhile, Sarah Johnson was officially offered the position of Director of International Relations. The salary was more than triple what she had been earning, but more importantly, it was the chance to finally use the full scope of her education and passion. When Marcus Wellington handed her the official offer letter, she had to read it 3 times before the reality sank in. Sarah, Marcus said earnestly, this isn't charity. This isn't us trying to make up for past mistakes. This is us recognizing that you are exactly what this company needs to succeed. Her response was simple, but profound. Mr. Wellington, you are giving me the chance to do what I was always meant to do. I won't let you down. That evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment, the offer letter in her hand. The walls around her, covered with diplomas and certificates that had long seemed like relics of a lost past, now represented a brilliant future. She picked up the phone and called her sister, pouring out the entire incredible story. On the other end of the line, her sister wept with joy. Sarah, she said, Mama and Papa would be so proud. You never gave up on yourself. 6 months later, the transformation at Global Tech was nothing short of extraordinary. International revenue had increased by 300%. From day one, Sarah had been a force of nature. She built a team not from traditional corporate backgrounds, but from the ranks of the overlooked. She hired Maria Gonzalez, a former professor from Mexico who had been working as a translator. She brought on Dr. Ahmed, an Egyptian engineer with a PhD who had been driving for a rideshare company. Her team included Kenji Tanaka, a Japanese business expert working in a restaurant, and Dr. Priya Sharma, an Indian economist who had been substitute teaching. Within months, she had assembled the most diverse and qualified international relations team Global Tech had ever seen. Each member brought not only professional expertise, but the lived experience of the cultures they were navigating. The results were immediate. The German automotive deal was revived and expanded. The partnership with Tanaka Industries blossomed, leading to 5 other major Japanese clients. Deals were successfully negotiated in France, Brazil, South Korea, and India. But Sarah didn't just close deals. She implemented comprehensive cultural training for all employees, creating a new foundation of global awareness and respect within the company. She was building more than a division. She was building a bridge to the world. She also launched an initiative that was particularly close to her heart, a mentorship program for immigrant professionals. This program forged a vital bridge, connecting skilled immigrants struggling to find work in their fields with established professionals who could guide them through the complexities of the American corporate landscape. The program was nothing short of groundbreaking. Within 6 months, it had empowered dozens of talented immigrants to secure meaningful employment, not just at global tech, but at companies all across the region. Sarah collaborated with universities, professional organizations, and community groups to identify and champion those who had been overlooked by traditional hiring processes. Marcus Wellington could hardly believe the metamorphosis. In his quarterly address to the company, he declared, "6 months ago, this company was hemorrhaging money on failed international ventures. Today, our international division is our fastest growing and most profitable sector. This turnaround didn't happen because we brought in expensive consultants or rolled out complex new systems. It happened because we finally recognized and unleashed the talent that was already walking our halls." He paused, letting his words sink in. Dr. Sarah Johnson didn't just save this company millions. She taught us that our greatest assets are often the people we aren't paying attention to. The success stories began to accumulate, one after another. The company's stock price soared as investors took note of the dramatic recovery in international performance. Business magazines featured global tech as a prime example of how cultural competence could fuel corporate success. But perhaps the most profound change was in the company's culture. A new awareness permeated the building. Employees started to look at their colleagues differently, recognizing that everyone possessed skills and life experiences that a job title could never capture. The mentorship program expanded, opening its doors not just to immigrants but to anyone who felt their talents were being underutilized. A security guard, who revealed he had an accounting degree, was transitioned to the finance department. A cafeteria worker with a hidden talent for software programming joined the IT team. Sarah established quarterly forums where any employee, regardless of their position, could present ideas for improving the company. These sessions became a wellspring of innovation, generating dozens of suggestions that led to greater efficiency and significant cost savings. The ripple effect spread beyond the walls of global tech. Other companies began to examine their own practices, wondering what hidden talent they too might be overlooking. Sarah was invited to speak at major conferences on the art of recognizing and developing untapped human potential. Universities began to partner with global tech, eager to model its inclusive corporate environment, and business schools added case studies of the company's transformation to their curricula. 2 years after her promotion, Sarah was invited to give the keynote address at Oxford University, speaking on the intersection of cultural competency and business success. Standing at the very podium where she had once defended her doctoral dissertation, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her full circle. But the most meaningful moments often came during Global Tech's annual new employee orientation. Sarah had made it a tradition to personally address every group of new hires, sharing her story and the profound lessons it held. Standing before 40 new employees, a diverse tapestry of backgrounds and departments, she began with the story that had become a company legend. 2 years ago, she said, her voice steady and clear, "I was the night janitor in this very building. Most of you would never have noticed me. I would have been invisible, just another person in a uniform, doing a job that many consider unimportant." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the attentive faces in the room. "But here is what I need you to understand. Every single person in this building, every colleague you work with has a story. They have skills, experiences, and perspectives that you cannot see on the surface." Sarah continued, her tone growing warmer. "The person who cleans your office might be a former teacher. The security guard at the front desk might be a gifted artist. The person serving your lunch could have a degree in engineering. That quiet colleague in the corner might speak 5 languages and hold the very insight that could transform your next project. She gestured to the group before her. You were all hired because global tech now understands that talent comes in many forms. But more than that, you were hired into a culture that values looking deeper, listening more carefully, and challenging the assumptions we so often make about people. The new employees were captivated. Many of them were immigrants or first-generation Americans, or simply people who had fought to have their own talents recognized. I want to challenge each of you, Sarah said, her voice rising with quiet passion. Look around your workplace. Pay attention to the people you might normally overlook. Start conversations with colleagues you don't usually talk to. Ask about their backgrounds, their ideas, their journeys. A small smile touched her lips as she recalled her own. You might just discover that the person you least expect has the exact knowledge you need to solve a problem, or the perfect skill to improve a process. But more importantly, treat everyone with the respect and dignity they deserve, regardless of their job title, because one day you may find that the person you dismissed was the most qualified person in the room. As she concluded, Sarah offered one final thought. This company succeeded not because we hired the most expensive consultants. We succeeded because we learned to truly see people, to value their unique perspectives, and to recognize that expertise doesn't always come in the package we expect. A standing ovation filled the room. But for Sarah, the best part came afterward, when several new hires approached her, one by one, to share their own stories of feeling overlooked. Later that day, she returned to her office on the 42nd floor. It was a beautiful space, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The walls were adorned with awards and photos from her travels, her desk piled high with proposals for new market expansions. But Sarah had not forgotten where she came from. Every evening at 10 o'clock she would walk through the building and greet the night shift workers by name, asking about their families, reminding them that their work was essential and deeply appreciated. She had also instituted a policy that any employee could schedule a meeting with her, and her calendar was always full of conversations that sparked some of the company's most innovative ideas. As she sat in her office, reflecting on the day, she marveled at how far she had come. From cleaning these same offices to leading one of their most successful divisions, her journey had been extraordinary. But she was most proud of what Global Tech had become, a company known not just for its products, but for its culture. The mentorship program had now helped over 200 professionals find their footing. The cultural competency training had been adopted by dozens of other corporations. The company's success had created hundreds of new jobs. The transformation of Global Tech was a testament to a profound truth. When we look beyond assumptions and create environments where every person can contribute their unique gifts, everyone benefits. Companies thrive, employees flourish, and the world becomes a more just and vibrant place. Sarah's story was not just about one woman's rise from janitor to executive. It was about the ocean of hidden potential that exists in every workplace, in every community, and in every person we meet. It was about the high cost of our own assumptions and the incredible rewards that come from truly seeing one another. The janitor who spoke 17 languages had become the executive who opened doors for countless others, and that perhaps was the most beautiful transformation of all. If this story inspired you, please consider sharing it so that others may learn from its message. We look forward to seeing you again.